If you are struggling with intuitive eating, you are most certainly not alone. It can feel like an overwhelming concept, let alone something that you can practice when you first start off. And the question that I get all the time is, how do I create an intuitive relationship with food when I don't trust my intuition around food? You likely have spent a lot of time in your life dieting, restricting foods, and being told that you cannot trust your intuition when it comes to food. So it makes sense that you are where you're at right now. But you're sick and tired of dieting, you're sick and tired of doing the same old and cycling through patterns of restriction and cutting out foods and food groups, and you like this idea of intuitive eating, but you don't understand how it happens. How do you go from not having any intuition around food to developing an intuitive relationship with food? If this is you, if you're feeling like, but I don't trust myself and I don't trust my intuition, but I want to become an intuitive eater, this video is for you. We're going to dive into the steps that you can specifically take in order to create a more intuitive relationship with food and your body when it comes to intuitive eating, so that you can move and take steps towards becoming an intuitive eater on your journey towards healing your relationship with food. But before we dive into things, let me introduce myself. My name is Catherine Metzler. I'm a registered dietitian, certified intuitive eating counselor, here to help you create peace with food and your body so that it takes up less headspace and so that you can live your life with more joy, abundance, and presence. Because let's be honest, dieting and diet culture steals life from you. You definitely want to take a listen to this. Likely you are on your own journey to healing your relationship with food and your body, and you are feeling curious, wondering about intuitive eating, especially if you are in a place where you're feeling stuck. Maybe you've read the book Intuitive Eating, followed social media accounts related to intuitive eating, but you're wondering, how do I go from not trusting my intuition around food to then all of a sudden taking this huge leap to trusting my intuition around food? That's what intuitive eating is about, after all, isn't it? Well, I want to tell you first that this is a very common question and you are not alone. It is normal, natural, to be expected to be scared of trusting your intuition. So I'm going to dive into why that is, why you're feeling stuck, and some specific steps that you can take in order to develop a greater sense of trust and intuition with your body so that you can develop an intuitive relationship with food. In order to develop an intuitive relationship with food, it is important to first acknowledge that there is an entire industry, an entire structure that works very hard to make sure that you are not connected to your own intuition. And this structure and system is diet culture. Diet culture is a culture that we exist in, a culture that prioritizes thinness over everything else, that tells you that there's good and bad foods, and if you don't adhere to that list of things, that you are somehow not a good person because of it. It judges people based on their body shape and size. It discriminates against people. It is constantly telling us that there's a specific kind of beauty standard that we need to adhere to, and so much more. Because you exist in that structure, and within diet culture, there are many multi-million-dollar businesses related to diets that seek to disrupt your connection to your own intuition. Think about it. Any diet that you've ever been on has told you exactly what to eat, how to eat, when to eat, how to move your body, how to count things, how to subtract things. The list can go on and on. But essentially, it has disrupted your intuition. What it tells you is you don't know about your body. And in fact, you don't know and you can't trust your body. And so follow me so that I can tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing, because you can't trust your intuition. So after years of being stuck in cycles of not trusting yourself, largely because you've been told that you can't trust yourself and that you can't trust your intuition, you likely are in a place right now where you feel like you can't trust your intuition, rightfully so. So let's talk about some specific things that you can do in order to develop a greater sense of trust around your intuition. The first step that you can take in order to create a greater sense of intuition around food and to trust it more and to become an intuitive eater is to reject the diet mentality. This involves taking time to acknowledge how rules around food have impacted you, and really taking a bold and brave step. And I want to emphasize that it is bold and brave to decide that you're not going to diet anymore. and that it's an essential step in order to create a greater sense of intuition. And why is this? Why am I asking you to reject the diet mentality and to reject dieting entirely in order to create a more intuitive relationship with food? This is because the rules around dieting, and whether it's dieting or a lifestyle program is all the same. Nonetheless, when you are stuck in cycles of dieting, this disrupts your ability to be able to connect yourself, because you are depending on an external source to tell you when to eat, where to eat, how much to eat. And of course, this disrupts your sense of intuition. What happens if you're hungry and you've eaten outside of the parameters of the diet? What happens if you want something that the diet is telling you that you can't follow? What happens if you don't want to eat vegetables one day, but the program that you're following is telling you that you need to eat them in a certain way? It disrupts your ability to continuously practice connecting to your own intuition, because your body has so much information that it's trying to communicate to you. Those channels have just been closed for a long time. And so we want to take steps slowly but surely over time to increasing the channels of communication. And one of the first steps that's necessary is committing to no longer dieting. This is a scary step. I realize that. It can be very scary to say, I'm no longer going to diet, I'm going to give it up. Here we go. And yet it is fundamental to create a more intuitive relationship with food, that you finally commit to no longer dieting. The second step that you can take to develop a greater sense of trust around your intuition when it comes to food is to give up the pursuit of weight loss. And hold on, before you leave, before you roll your eyes, before you feel tension inside your body, let's talk about this a little bit more, because it's a nuanced topic. Part of existing in diet culture means that you are essentially told from birth that you should be pursuing weight loss at all cost to your mental and physical well-being. You should be spending money on it. You should be seeking to shrink your body shape and size. And what happens as a result of this pursuit is that it disrupts and interrupts our body's ability, one, to feel safe, and two, to be nourished, and three, for us to develop a sense of connection and intuition to our body. This is, again, as I noted before, because we are relying on other sources to tell us about our own body, our own sense of intuition. And it often requires that we engage in some pretty harmful behaviors and disordered behaviors in order to pursue weight loss. So in that process, we are disrupting, and you are disrupting your ability to be able to connect to your intuition around food. Now, I want to remind you that this is not something that happens overnight. We don't just wake up and decide that we're gonna stop the pursuit of weight loss. Considering the culture that we live in, considering the inundation of messages around thinness being better, considering that you have existed possibly for most of your life with the feeling and idea and felt sense of obligation that you need to constantly be pursuing weight loss. There is a lot of grief and body image work that often needs to take place alongside of, or sometimes even before this process, so that you can take steps towards giving up the pursuit of weight loss. Know that there is grief in this process. Know that it is really scary and challenging. And if you want to create a more intuitive relationship with food, this is going to be part of what you will need to do, what you'll need to explore, what you'll need to challenge. And the third thing that I want to recommend to you, if you are wanting to create a greater sense of trust around your intuition, and you are not in a place where you trust your intuition and you don't feel like you're an intuitive eater yet, is to really practice eating regularly. And this is hard if you have been on diets in the past. This is where sometimes things tend to collide. What I mean by that more specifically is that if you've been on diets and lifestyle programs and other things where they've told you that you need to eat in a very specific way, and now you're wanting to take steps towards healing your relationship with food and becoming more of an intuitive eater, and the ask is that you eat more regularly, there can be this feeling inside that's like, wait a minute, I thought I was supposed to trust my body. I thought I was supposed to get off of doing things that other people tell me how to do it and when to do it and when to eat. And so there is nuance here, so let's talk about it. Eating regularly and consistently does not mean that you are not also taking steps simultaneously to become an intuitive eater. The reason why I'm recommending that you start with this, and this is often a launching pad towards becoming an intuitive eater, is because lots of people have lost the connection to their body through dieting and through other lived experiences that you've had in your life. And so if I say, great, eat when you want, whenever you want, that might feel really overwhelming and kind of scary, right? Where do you begin? What if you don't feel hunger cues? What if you don't understand your fullness? And so I find that it's often really helpful to think about generally how humans benefit most from eating. So you've heard me say this before likely, but generally every 2 to 4 hours, your body is going to need more food. Of course, this is not a hard and fast rule. This is not a rule. This is a guideline. So you might need to eat an hour after you eat, or you might need to wait 5 hours if you've had a larger meal. But generally you can use the clock to guide frequency of meals and snacks. And if we're using that pattern of eating, that tends to look like 3 meals and 2 to 3 snacks a day. This is a helpful starting place to set reminders for yourself, to plan ahead of time, to start creating meals and snacks for yourself, not in an obsessive way, not in a I'm going to portion things out way. This just means that you can be thoughtful about thinking about eating regularly as you develop skill around trusting your intuition. You cannot go from 0 to 100. You cannot go from building the foundation to all of a sudden having a whole large building built. You have to work your way up. And one of the ways that we do that to develop skill and to increase your felt sense of trust around your intuition is to eat regularly. And then over time, you can take steps towards having things be less scheduled in that way as you develop skill around trusting your hunger, for example, honoring your fullness, and all the other things that we're working on when it comes to intuitive eating. Please know that developing skill around becoming an intuitive eater can take time. It is not a hunger fullness diet. I want to be clear about that. Intuitive eating is simply a framework that you can work from in order to cultivate a greater sense of trust and intuition with your body. It's not a step-by-step program. You don't have to tick boxes or work through things in a very specific or rigid way. You are able to, and I would encourage you to pull what resonates, what works, as you develop skill around healing your relationship with food. If you hold yourself to high standards and you might consider yourself a perfectionist, be mindful of this not turning into a pass-fail situation. Like, you better intuitively eat or else. It is not that. We simply are taking steps, slow and steady, progress over perfection, as a way to cultivate a greater sense of connection to our body, which also involves connecting to our own intuition when it comes to food. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you end up trying any of these, comment below, like this video, share this with other people in your life, subscribe to my channel. And if you want more from me, check out the resources below. Check out the free resource that I made for you, which is how to create peace with food when you're afraid of weight gain, as well as other resources that you can find below. And I will see you back here next week.